I know this will sound controversial, but even 3-year-old humans can consent to sex. Sex is only rape if it is forced, and not every child is forced to have sex. Even if a dog had the mind of a 3-year-old, as long as the dog is not forced, it won't be rape. If foids can naturally be hypergamous, why can't men naturally rape them? Foids think it's all natural, but rape is also natural. It's how humans reproduce for a large portion of human history. They can naturally be hypergamous, but they must also expect men to naturally rape them. Rape is natural in the animal kingdom, so why is it so frowned upon in human society? No, this isn't a troll question. In nature, it is common for animals to use rape as a method of reproduction. Just look at mallard ducks, for example. If animals can do it, why can't we? Humans are animals after all. It's not fair that they get to rape, but us humans can't. This is why being human is overrated. You are forced to act civilized, and if you don't, you will be kicked out from the tribe. People forget the fact that we are animals and our primal nature still exists. We still have urges that need to be met. If women are going to gatekeep sex all the time, you can't just expect us to put up with that and play by the rules. I am begging. Lock them up.
Being of a certain nationality, race, religion, sexuality, or disability status does not prevent an individual from being an asshole. Being oppressed on one axis does not prevent a person from oppressing someone else on a different axis. This concept is not particularly difficult to understand, though many willfully misinterpret the concept of intersectionality, or perhaps are too unintelligent to understand it. Many leftists use intersectionality as an excuse to dilute social movements through superfluous inclusivity. Often, this centers on feminism, as the fight for women's liberation is consistently considered a less important goal, and women are repeatedly told to focus instead on the group identity which men can be a part of. As a result, women's issues are minimized by being presented as so universal as to no longer be related to being of the female sex, or so exclusive that it is not worth focusing on, as the attention will be better served addressing issues with wider impact. Women are thus silenced when they center their own experiences as women or as women of a certain group. An excerpt from Catherine McKinnon's Are Women Human illustrates this point clearly. She writes, "Human rights principles are not based on the experience of women. It is not that women's human rights have not been violated. When women are violated like men, who but for sex are like them, when women's arms and legs bleed when severed, when women are shot in pits and gassed in vans, when women's bodies are salted away at the bottom of abandoned mines or dropped from planes into the ocean, when women's skulls are sent from Auschwitz to Strasbourg for experiments. This is not recorded as the history of human rights atrocities to women. They are Argentinian or Honduran or Jewish. When things happen to women that also happen to men, like being beaten and disappeared and tortured to death, the fact that they happen to women is not noted in the record books of human suffering. When no war has been declared and still women are beaten by men with whom they are close, when wives disappear from supermarket parking lots, when prostitutes float up in rivers or turn up under piles of rags in abandoned buildings. These atrocities go unmarked entirely in the record of human suffering because the victims are women and it smells of sex. What happens to women is either too particular to be universal or too universal to be particular, meaning either too human to be female or too female to be human."
Look, he fucking nutted on my fucking leg! You go to hell, bitch! Oh my god! He nutted on my leg! He nutted on my leg!
Furthermore, many women view misogyny as being a lesser offense or an oppression that is excusable when presented from an otherwise disenfranchised source. The fear of being labeled as racist, ableist, or transphobic is greater than the desire to speak out against mistreatment. This is often excused through the misused lens of intersectionality, which has been wielded to turn misogyny into an unimportant issue, particularly because of how women's issues are not viewed as inclusive enough, and through turning women's suffering into universal problems divorced from sex. Many blame intersectionality for the rise of violence against women and other offenses, be it from the intrusion of men who identify as women into women's spaces, or through culturally excused violence against women.
I don't menstruate.
Okay, real talk from a real practitioner. No, Jeffrey. The reason isn't that you do not menstruate is not because you're non-binary. It doesn't matter how you choose to dress, doesn't matter who you choose to sleep with, it doesn't matter how you choose to identify. The reason you will never menstruate is because you are a biological male.
I'm utterly horrified by women who have come on this app to be blatantly transphobic and try to guise it through their gynocentrism and internalize misogyny about trans people and non-binary folks who menstruate. We can have a conversation about women's health, generally speaking, without being transphobic. We all know how patronizing and how patriarchal the medical system has been to us for centuries. If you actually listen to what Jeffrey is actually saying, they're not speaking for us. They're advocating things like inclusivity, and some of y'all are taking this as a personal attack against womanhood and what it means to be a woman. I know that we can further unpack gender norms and expectations and socialization, but I want to leave you with this thought. Your notions of womanhood, in this case of menstruation, are dependent on belittling and being derogatory towards trans and non-binary folks. Does that actually help in the long run? And who does that actually affect? Because remind me again whose bodies and identities are under attack right now for the most part in the United States and Canada. It's women, trans, non-binary, queer folks, we're all under attack right now. Some of y'all want to make it all about this us versus them mentality, and we know best because this is an experience in our body. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Because you can talk about your experiences with menstruation as a woman while being respectful of trans and non-binary folks who do menstruate. No one is going to take that away from us. I sincerely implore you folks to unpack and challenge your transphobia. Based on a lot of the comments that I have been seeing on multiple posts about this, some of y'all are being so cruel about this, and I could no longer be silent.
However, when Kimberly Crenshaw first used the term, it was to discuss how Black women were consistently left out of anti-racist and feminist movements due to an inability to acknowledge that Black women were more than just a sum of their parts, and thus had experiences and needs that were unique to the juxtaposition of their multifaceted identities. In her 1989 paper, Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex, a Black feminist critique of anti-discrimination doctrine, feminist theory, and anti-racist politics, she argued that Black women are sometimes excluded from feminist theory and anti-racist policy discourse because both are predicated on a discrete set of experiences that often does not accurately reflect the interaction of race and gender, and that these problems of exclusion cannot be solved simply by including Black women within an already established analytical structure, because the intersectional experience is greater than the sum of racism and sexism. Quite simply, a Black woman is more than just Black and a woman. Addressing a problem from a purely Black liberation or feminist lens can be helpful for addressing certain issues, but it also fails to actually acknowledge or solve problems that Black women face because they are Black women.
There's a sequence of events here you all never consider. I did disparage all Black men, the same way I'm disparaging all men, because all men are predators. Then you expect us to take a brick for you. No, I don't. I don't expect for men to do anything. I actually expect for you all to be the assailants, not the protectors. Exactly. You're behaving as expected, which is why I'm telling women to always arm themselves when they're around a man, because you don't know if that man is a garden snake or a rattlesnake, but that man could hurt you. Whether it be your brother, your daddy, your uncle, men will hurt you. We're not expecting protection you never provided. There's really nothing for us to look forward to. Because you all yell that we are the protectors and the providers, but we see time and time again that you don't do anything. There's only so much yelling you all can do about the actions you all want to take before women see no examples of that, and we go our own way.
Perhaps the most obvious example can be seen in the institution of slavery in the United States, where Black people were subject to horrible mistreatment and abuse, but Black women were subject to specific kinds of abuse, namely sexual and reproductive.
One thing I didn't learn about is Dr. Sims, who was known as the father of gynecology. He was known for learning how to treat VVF, but in the midst of it all, 3 women suffered terribly for over 4 years because of his experiments. He was known for treating and experimenting on dozens of women, including white women. But black women were the ones who were not given anesthesia because they believed that black women, or black people period, did not feel pain. There were 3 main women that he experimented on the most and for the longest. They were between 17 and 19. Their names was Anarcha, Lucy, and Betsy. Now these women were enslaved in Alabama, and they were given to Dr. Sims because they had BVF. And when you have BVF, it is hard, or it was impossible at the time, for them to reproduce. Now, in the eyes of these plantation owners, they needed to give them to Dr. Sims so that they could reproduce children who can be born into chattel slavery. On multiple accounts, he recorded the fact that Lucy had cried as if she was going to die several times during those experiments. On top of enduring excruciating physical pain, these women were being experimented on in front of dozens of other physicians. Now, Anarcha was a 17-year-old girl who went through 30 surgeries before he was able to perfect his procedure. So yeah, next time you hear about the father of gynecology, remember this.
However, misogyny and violence against black women because of their race and sex can be traced throughout American history and the civil rights movement. In the autobiography of Malcolm X, he refers to women with remarks such as, "All women by their nature are fragile and weak. They are attracted to the male in whom they see strength." Or, "I'd had too much experience that women were only tricky, deceitful, untrustworthy flesh. Women talk too much." Nina Boskinovica notes in Malcolm X and the Fair Sex, representation of women in Malcolm X's autobiography, that he was also an advocate of black nationalist philosophy in its more particular quasi-Islamic form, which both countered racism and constructed utopian and repressive gender relations, offering a masculinist analysis of black oppression, and conflated blackness, masculinity, and political astuteness. According to Dyson, the demonology of the Nation of Islam not only viewed racism as an ill from its outside group, but argued that women were a lethal source of deception and seduction from within. Eldridge Cleaver wrote the best-selling Soul on Ice, a collection of essays that became the political manifesto of the Black Panther Party. In it, he wrote, "I started out by practicing on black girls from the ghetto, where dark and vicious deeds appear not as deviations from the norm, but as part of the suffering of the evil of a day. And when I considered myself smooth enough, I crossed the tracks and sought out white prey. Rape was an insurrectionary act. It delighted me that I was defying and trampling upon the white man's law, upon his system of values." The Washington Post notes that he was welcomed in Algeria as a hero.
Cleaver says, "There is no love left between a black man and a black woman. Take me, for instance. I love white women and hate black women. It's just in me, so deep that I don't even try to get it out of me anymore." Cleaver, I'll continue, "I jump over 10 nigger bitches just to be with one white woman. Ain't no such thing as an ugly white woman. A white woman is beautiful even if she's bald-headed and only has one tooth. It's not just the fact that she's a woman that I love. I love her skin, her soft, smooth, white skin. I like to just lick her white feet as if sweet, fresh honey flows from her pores, and just to touch her long, silky hair. There's a softness about white women, something delicate and soft inside her. But a nigger bitch seems to be full of steel, granite hard and resisting, not soft and submissive like a white woman. Ain't nothing more beautiful than a white woman's hair being blown by the wind. A white woman is more than a woman to me. She's like a goddess, a symbol. My love for her is religious and beyond fulfillment. I worship her. I love a white woman's dirty drawers." Now that's about as close to insanity as I would care to get.
Even now, the recent focus on racial injustice has largely left black women behind, even as the movement itself was carried by the work of black female labor. Within the black community, acts of violence against black women are often viewed from a religious and cultural perspective, which excuses this behavior for the sake of appearance of harmony, or out of a belief that it is a black woman's duty to sacrifice for black men as they are more oppressed. A 1999 collection of essays titled Black Men on Race, Gender, and Sexuality writes, "Heterosexual black men occupy a privileged victim status in anti-racist discourse. This is quite apparent in the anti-racist discourse about crime and in anti-racist responses to domestic abuse. A central project of anti-racist discourse is to reveal the extent to which black men are victims of a racist criminal justice system. Given the statistics for black male incarceration and the problems of discrimination in the criminal justice system, this project is undeniably important. Nevertheless, as a result of this focus on black men without a similar focus on black women, black men are perceived to be significantly more vulnerable and significantly more endangered than black women. They become the quintessential example of the effects of racial insubordination. Crystal Zook explains the point this way. The endangered black man narrative speaks to very real assaults on the material well-being of black men, but it is part of a larger myth of racial authenticity that is cultivated in ghetto-centric culture, a myth that renders invisible the specific contours of living in female, working-class, gay, and lesbian black bodies. As a consequence of this myth of racial authenticity and the currency of the endangered black male trope, when an individual black man is on trial for some criminal offense, the black community sees first and foremost his status as a racial victim. Furthermore, when the alleged crime involves violence against women, the fact that a black female or woman of any race may be the victim of black male aggression is subordinate to the concern that a black man may be the victim of a racist criminal justice system. Consider, for example, the anti-racist discourse about the O.J. Simpson case. While there was a fair amount of evidence indicating that Simpson had physically abused his ex-wife, many blacks viewed Simpson simply as a victim of a racist conspiracy perpetuated by the police and the prosecution. He became a symbol of racial injustice, an icon of racial victimization, in a way that obscured, denied, excused, or minimized the fact that he was a chronic wife-beater.
So O.J. Simpson died today, and a lot of people are reflecting back on that time during the trial. And I just wanted to share that one thing that I learned later after the trial that I did not understand at the time, granted I was young and ignorant, is that the black community had a very different perspective on that trial, and I was confused. It was pretty obvious to me that OJ was guilty, and I thought the black community thought he was innocent. No, they were just very, in a strange way, comforted that money wins in the justice system. The justice system has been stacked against them racially and financially, and this one time, money made some equality.
Of course, the concept of biting one's tongue to avoid harming another group can be seen elsewhere, from the rhetoric that women should be willing to risk personal safety to protect mentally ill men, or ignore that disabled men calling for state-allocated prostitutes is still misogyny. The belief that misogyny is excusable if a sufficiently oppressed man does it permeates every leftist movement. Worse still is the policing of how these issues are discussed. If one is to say, discuss misogyny in the context of Islam, several of the rules of misogyny come into play. Namely, number 10, the worst thing about male violence is that it makes men look bad. 11, whatever women suffer from, it is worse when it happens to men. And 12, women's ability to recognize male behavior patterns is misandry. Many seem to fear being viewed as bigoted in some way, shape, or form as a bigger concern than calling out harm to women. Suddenly noting trends of violence or abuse, for example, discussing how women in Afghanistan have been barred from education, or how India routinely has horrific cases of gang rape in international headlines, is wrong because it makes men look bad. It doesn't. Men make men look bad when they do bad things. I don't make them look bad by pointing out these crimes any more than I make the sky blue by pointing out the weather.
በጣም ከባድ ነው። ከስላት ጋር መሆን በጣም ከባድ ነው። ከሱ ጋር ነው የቆምኩት። ከሱ ጋር ስድብ አለ፣ ውጭ ላይ ማስፈራሪያ አለ። በጣም ከባድ ነው። በየደፍሮ እንዳትጮህበት የሱ አስነዋሪ አጸያፊ ነውር በአደባባይ እንዳይታይ እንዳይሰማበት ማማሽ ነው። ልጄ ስንት መስዋዕት ከፍዬ ያሳደግኩት ልጄ ደረሰችልኝ ብዬ በጉጉት አይኔ አይኗን ያየው ጓደኛዬን አደረስ ልጄ ዛሬ ነይ በሽተኛው ያለው ለዛውም ስንት ግፍ ስንት ማስፈራሪያ እየደረሰብኝ
When a person fulfills a negative stereotype of their culture, race, background, or what have you, the answer is not to pretend it didn't occur, nor is it to argue that such an action was innate. Either response wrongfully presents immorality or harm as inevitable, which removes any responsibility to enact change. The solution is to acknowledge it, study it, determine why it occurred, and what can be done to prevent it from occurring again. It is no favor to a minority group to pretend that there is no wrongdoing there, and often, doing so explicitly harms women by presenting the suffering of women due to other traits as necessary, cultural, or inescapable.
Can you imagine your vagina looking like this? This is what my vagina looked like for 24 years of my life. 24 years of my life, I had to live with this because of a practice called FGM, female genital mutilation. That is a completely unnecessary practice. That is a vile criminal act towards young girls that is still going around in this world, that is still happening to many girls. It's risen by 15%, which makes me so angry. My whole life I felt angry, I felt betrayed. The anger that I feel is directed purely towards my parents, towards my caregivers, the people that were supposed to protect me and the community that I came from. I'm so angry with them, I'm so disappointed. As a mother today, I can't fathom how a parent, a mother, can put her child, her daughter, her precious innocent little girl through something so horrific, all in the name of culture, in the name of marriage, in the name of being pleasurable to a man in the future. I mean, when someone is 6 or 7, you're looking at them and you're already thinking about their future. You're already thinking if this girl could provide some sorts of pleasure for a man in the future. That is disgusting. That is vile. That you can look at a child that is just being innocent, that is just being playful, that is just living out their childhood in that manner. As a parent, you're supposed to be the protector of the child. Protect your girls. Stop being silent about FGM. Prevention is better than cure.
Forcing women to ignore pattern recognition, which is necessary for risk judgment and personal safety, helps no one. Arguing that recognizing patterns is racist, ableist, or transphobic is arguing that women are stupid and bigoted for valuing their own safety. As Carla Mantilla notes in Let Them Eat Text, The Real Politics of Postmodernism, exceptions alone do not, however, disprove the validity of generalizations. If I make a generalization that people stop at red lights while driving, certainly it is true that occasionally some people do not. However, it is an accurate and useful statement that people stop at red lights. It describes, with reasonable accuracy, a social phenomenon. To say that the generalization is not true simply because a few people do not fit it is ludicrous and leaves us unable to describe or even name the most obvious social norms. The overall effect of this turn away from meta-narratives is to stop people from being able to describe their social conditions, from being able to generalize about personal experiences in their lives, from being able to see the commonalities of experience that can mobilize them to see problems as political rather than personal. The net effect is a lot of women's studies students saying, you really can't say that about even the most basic truths.
I will not support women doing anything that benefits a few women to the detriment of all the rest. That is what I believe sex work does. And while I acknowledge the women who are trafficked and forced, I can still hold the other women accountable. I can hold men and women accountable. And I'm tired of seeing grown adults on this app tell girls and teenagers it is the only thing they can do. It is all they're good for. It's the only way they can make a living. I think that is the most toxic and dangerous message we can send to any girl or woman in the world. Everyone is above sex work. And I know saying that will get me canceled. I will never support it.
There's no way y'all would rather be trapped in the woods with a bear over a man.
In March of 2022, 4 men were convicted of gang raping, murdering, and then eating a monitor lizard. They were caught because the trail cams in the wildlife preserve recorded it. Somebody went back and saw those videos and saw this act. Tell me again why I should be more afraid of bears?
this, dear viewers, is where we part. I just want to point out, I did a recent poll, and the question was essentially, what's worse? Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. You still have the same value system you have today, but you're getting canceled for something which is worse, being called racist, transphobic, homophobic, misogynistic, or bigoted. And I'm not sure if a lot of people caught it, but the thing that's most important here is nothing about yourself has changed. I believe in everything that I speak about on this channel. I have researched my positions. I'm open-minded when people bring up alternative perspectives. As long as you have facts, I am willing to look into the studies that you bring forward to me. I don't say things without knowing for a fact that I support what I am saying. And so I know that I am not racist. I'm not transphobic, homophobic, misogynistic, bigoted. I'm not any of those things. And so if a person decides to call me any of those things, they're wrong, because I trust my own judgment and intelligence to know that I'm not a bigot, that I don't judge people based on immutable aspects of who they are in a negative manner. At least, not without proof. When feminists talk about male patterns of behavior and criminality, the best men out there are the ones who understand, I may not personally be doing these things, but a lot of other men do, and thus don't blame women for recognizing those patterns. A lot of leftist spaces are filled with either guys who are saying, no, gender's not real, this man is not a man, it's a woman, and therefore you have to ignore all the statistics and studies and anecdotes and all the knowledge you have, because otherwise it's to be bigoted, and that's how they control behavior. The same thing goes for racism and homophobia. There are a lot of gay guys who are misogynistic. There are a lot of lesbians who are supportive of transgender ideology. Just because someone is of a certain demographic doesn't mean that they're infallible or that they're protected from being stupid. And I do hope that on this channel I provide all of my sources, I cite extensively. I hope that if you find something that you think I said is wrong, that you go look for it yourself. I hope that you do read studies on your own, that you do seek out articles, that not everything that you make your opinions on comes just from YouTube or TikTok or what have you. Critical thinking is the most important thing out there, because once you become a critical thinker, you have the ability to be sure of yourself, to know who you are and what you believe, and who you are and what you believe, your identity, although it's widely over and misused, should not be as a blade of grass flowing in the wind. Who you are should not shift based on how others view you. You should not have to hide who you are or what you believe in. And the only reason why you would hide what you believe in is if you think it's wrong. Or in the case of many of the topics I discuss, because enough people think it's wrong, there's a certain danger to being truthful, to being honest, to being authentic. Well, personally, I think that the solution is to suffer. Probably can't move to Australia because of my channel. My face is on it. I've participated in quite a few activist groups, so I'm sure my name's out there somewhere too. And I imagine that a lot of people don't want to risk losing opportunities because of it. But to be honest, I think the only way through these issues is to speak openly and honestly what you actually believe, because no matter what people call you for believing it, if you trust yourself and your judgment, then you know that what you're saying isn't racist or transphobic or homophobic or whatever. Anyway, this, dear viewers, is where we part. Yes, you can tell that I'm still annoyed about the India video, because some people are stupid. I'm gonna leave it at that. I've realized that there are some people who are just so stupid that there's no point in arguing with them on certain topics. Or they're so stubborn, like they have it's like a Jenga tower. Their whole worldview hinges on this one little block here, and if you touch it, the whole worldview they have just collapses, and then they'll just spontaneously combust because they can't handle it. So I recognize that there are people like that, and I wash my hands of it, and I have a block button for a reason, so you can be stupid somewhere else. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can let me know in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.